Welcome to Silent Service. My name is Will. That is Matt. We are on for episode 6 of Silent Service. This episode is entitled, So, What Do You Actually Want? And we're going to dive deep into this question, give you all kinds of knowledge that I've picked up and Matt most certainly has picked up throughout his wonderful career. But before we get into that, Matt, I would love to know how you're doing. Please give me your MEPS if you don't mind.
Well, good morning, Will, first and foremost. Happy to jump right into maps. How you doing though? I gotta ask you. How you doing?
Right, right. I'm doing well.
Good
I
day?
I'm having a wonderful day. It's
Good
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
It's Tuesday. Phenomenal start. I got my teeth cleaned. And what's interesting is I was at well, shout out to Kennedy Dental, Lakewood Ranch. I got in there, and with all due
No, no,
respect,
no. Shout out to Hillview Dental,
Hillview Dental.
my competing dentist office. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh
I'm
geez.
just kidding.
Oh geez.
I'm just kidding. Sorry. Keep going.
No, 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 you're good. Yeah, when I got there, this lady, she appeared to want to go ahead and do some kind of transactional appointment. And she didn't ask me how I was doing. She didn't ask me how my day was going. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa,
Mm,
whoa. You're going to be spending some time looking at my teeth. Let me at least ask you how you're doing. And
sure.
so eventually, because I made it known that I wanted to see how she was doing, she kind of took a back seat. She was like, huh, this person might actually care who I am and what I'm all about. And I was like, yeah, of course I do. So we ended up becoming friendly enough to where if I saw her on the street, I would most certainly say hello and check in on her. So
How cool is that? But for
great.
something like that, right? Like think about how you were probably like a bright spot in her day. Right? Like for her, it was probably just another day, right? Just another day at the office. But you weren't the everyday or average patient, right? And what I'm thinking about is the interaction she had with the patient after you. How do
I
you think that changed through your interactions? Because that's what's cool to me.
totally. I mean, I suppose comparison is the thief of all joy, but she might be standing there with her next patient right now and be thinking to herself, man, I wish this patient would ask me how I'm doing and genuinely cared like my last patient. So who
Right?
knows?
Or alternatively, she is now following suit and doing what you did and asking her patient, like, truly, like how are you doing?
Right, right.
It's
As
just
we
so cool.
as we said in the last episode or the one before that, people don't care what you know until they know you care. So
Exactly.
I
Yep,
try to live
exactly.
that. And
Well, let's get in a little bit of the MEPS here because I know we got a lot to cover on the what is it that you really want? A topic that I think both of us, have spent quite some time, debating and asking ourselves. But mentally, I'm feeling clear, very clear today. Emotionally, I'm energized, feeling really good. Physically, I'm feeling a little bit heavy. I've been increasing my workouts, so a lot more load. So I'm just feeling a little heavy today. Spiritually, um, giving. I'm in the giving mood.
amazing.
Giving mood today.
That's so
Yes,
cool.
yes. In fact, Will, you have not had that sandwich that I was talking to you about earlier today. Would you join me at lunch in, like a half hour, 45 minutes to at least participate and see how delicious this is?
Of course I will. It's on
All right,
me.
let's go. No, no, no. I'm in the giving mood, so it's not on you. It's on me. I got this. Meps, though, how are you doing? How are you doing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? How's Will doing?
Mentally, I'm feeling at ease, Matt. And I've been using this law, which I haven't forgotten. You said in the last episode it can't be implemented. It is a law. Regardless of whether you use it, it
It's
always
always there.
exists. And I love that. And I think about it all day, every day. Now that we've chatted about it. Mostly I'm feeling calm. I was fortunate enough to set aside some time to meditate. I actually got to the dentist's office early and I was listening to Brandon Jacobs and then I pressed pause and then I opened up, YouTube 10-minute meditation and so I
Hmm.
sat there and felt good. Um, Physically, I feel awesome. I really do. And I'm grateful for that. And
You've been working
spirit,
out? You've been
yeah,
active?
yeah,
Good.
I have. Um, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I most certainly adopted your routine. which I hope is okay.
Of
We've talked
course.
about this just a touch, but for the listener, every single morning, Matt wakes up at the crack of dawn and he works out for at least an hour. Sometimes his son watches him, and as soon as he's done with that, he reads. Because once again, you know, ask me or show me your friends, I'll show you your future is completely valid, but it's also show me what you're reading and I'll show you your future. I took that to heart. And um,
No, I'll break it
deep,
down. Like I'll go over the full schedule. Like we could do that today. We could do it on another podcast. But I didn't hear
oh,
how you're doing spiritually.
right, right. That's in the works. Routine
All
is
right.
it will be an episode for sure. But spiritually, I'm feeling like I'm in a serving mood. I am. Um, so similar to giving, serving is how I'm feeling. So those are my MEPs, brother.
I love it. I love it. You're doing good. I'm doing well. We're in a place to make some impact. Let's get into it, brother. I love it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, um, Matt, to give you some context and to give the listener some context, the reason I wanted to talk about this question of what it is you actually want, right? We all have to work, and it's important to ultimately choose what it is you enjoy or something that you might be passionate about because you're going to spend most of your waking hours at an office, possibly, or outside, whatever it may be. And I couldn't help but remember uh, a question that my former roommate and friend asked me. He was unsure of what he wanted to do career-wise, so he said, "How should I know what I want to do? I've never done anything." And obviously, he's done, little jobs here and there, bartender, not that that's a little job, but he's bartended, he's done some service work with underprivileged kids, but he doesn't want to make a career out of that. What he meant by that is he's never worked at an office, say 9 to 5, never had a salary job. So how's he supposed to know if he's never done anything?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it seems simple, but I thought it was rather profound and it had me thinking for this episode. And specifically, it had me feeling about the listener because I believe most people feel this way. And through deep thought about this, it's allowed me to understand the truth, and that is, you figure it out by doing, right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
by thinking.
Yeah, doing
And
exposure, right?
totally. I feel like, people who are, let's say, trying to figure it out, they're early in their career progression or they're a couple decades into it. You might
Mm-hmm.
never know what it is you truly want to do, but I am curious, Matt, based on your expertise, do you have any feedback on this topic for me?
I have tremendous feedback. And this is an area I wish, you know, school and the education system invested more into each and every one of us in helping understand the things that we truly want in life. Because I'm hearing two different type of questions or two types of mentalities, I guess. You know, one is like, what am I doing? And then the other one is like, what do I want? Right. So I do see those two as like being disparate, like completely separate.
Okay.
And the journey that I've been taken on by my mentors. So, and again, from time to time, you're going to hear me continuously reference like the same people who made just a substantial impact in my life. And one of those individuals, probably the individual who had the greatest impact in my life, is my father-in-law, Jim Abrams. And he had conditioned me to think about business and career as a vehicle to obtain the things that you want out of life, but not being your life. One's job, one's career, one's business is not their life. Granted, it may be their baby. It may be, you know, what they're investing their entire selves into, but it is not their life. And it should be viewed as a vehicle to be able to get them the things that they want out of life. So when I go deep into planning and thinking about what do I want and helping others gain clarity in terms of what it is that they want, where I typically start is on life design. What kind of life do you want to live? What are like what kind of house are you living in? How frequently are you taking vacations? What kind of vacations? What car are you driving? Are you married? You know, are you in a relationship? Do you have children? With children, are they going to be going to public school or private school? Are you going to be covering, you know, their college tuition? Are you going to be saving for them? Right? These are the questions that one would ask if they were attempting to design their own life. They would stop and think about, like, really, what do I want? And hopefully, they're doing it at a young enough age to where they can begin looking for the appropriate vehicle that gets them there. For a lot of us, I do think, well, not even a lot of us. I think for everyone has the desire, to have a lot of materialistic items, um, financial security, a lot of friendships, a lot of relationships, right? Like everyone has the desire for more. In fact, if I were to ask everyone in our office right now, well, who wants more? I bet you every single person is going to raise their hand, right? Like, do you agree with that? Like every person's going to raise their hand.
Do, do.
But that's again desire. On the other side, we have ambition. And I think perhaps only 2% of the population actually has the ambition to do the work necessary to get the things that they desire in life. So coming back to your original question in terms of like, how does one gain clarity in terms of what they want? I sidestep business. I sidestep career. I sidestep what would I be doing on a day-to-day basis? And I move over again to what do I want my life to look like? And
Mm,
I attempt to take as macro of a view as possible. Do you want multiple properties? Right? Like that's a question.
right,
What kind of vacations are you taking? Are these like luxury Ritz-Carlton related vacations, or are you happy to be, content camping, out in Mayaca? Right? We're
right.
all different. We all think this would make me happy, or this would make a successful life for me. But until you begin gaining exposure, back to your point, sometimes you just don't know.
Mm,
So when it comes to, like relativity, I guess is a big deal. Like I wasn't exposed to massive levels of wealth until I went to Rollins College. And there was fortunate to, be friends with a few different multi-billionaires, at least their families. And I was exposed to the type of toys and freedom and lifestyle that type of, financial security can provide. And without having been exposed, right, I probably wouldn't want the same things that I want today.
that's
So
fascinating.
sometimes you do need exposure. And freaking, it's like, where do you get that exposure? Right? Like it's not the same. Like watch something in a video as an example.
Right. And do you think that metric 2% of people have the ambition is so low because most people succumb to the idea of passivity? Or in another sense, if people out there weren't exposed to the same sense of wealth that you were exposed to at Rollins, they might not even be aware that it's possible.
I don't know if that's true. I think it really comes back to like work ethic and
Okay.
effort. I don't think people necessarily want to do the work for the rewards.
Mm,
They want the rewards, but they don't want to do the work.
right.
And the work that we're talking about is the hard work, the hardest of work.
Right.
Because if it was easy, right, to be able to sack away 1 million after tax at a bank account, everyone would do it, right? Like
Right.
obviously,
Right.
right? If it was easy to be in shape with a six pack, right, and have an athletic build, everyone would look like that. But look at America.
Right. I mean,
What,
McDonald's is right there. Yeah.
yeah, and what do most of us do? We take the path of least resistance when that's not what successful people do.
Right.
Successful people seek the hard path and they choose the harder path because they
Right.
understand who that will forge them into.
Right. You know, Matt, from listening to well, founders in particular, the episode I mentioned to you a few days ago, James Cameron, director of Avatar,
Mhm.
director of just phenomenal films, he has this belief within himself that if something's not hard, he doesn't want any part of it, which I think
And I
is
I like that.
fantastic.
But like it comes back around to like happiness. And again, I think we touched upon this briefly, in one of our former conversations, where it's like more than likely some of the happiest moments of your life were when you were doing really hard things. And that level of satisfaction on the other end. So like, like just real life to me right now. So my son, who's going into first grade, we're on summer break right now and there isn't a lot of schoolwork. So my wife and I are, attempting to do everything we can to get my son to journal, to effectively practice writing, practice creating sentences. And for him, he just doesn't want to do it. And I was very similar. I just didn't like school when I was young. And we struggled over the last couple of days getting him to do it. And yesterday when I got home from work and he ran up to me and he was like, Papa, Papa, guess what? Guess what? And I was like what? He's like, I don't have to do my journal today. And to me, I'm like, okay, right? Like he must have done something, had good behavior. My wife was like, all right, you're off the hook today. But no, no, he had already done it earlier in the day. He was just so proud of himself for doing what's hard for him. So he accomplished the hard task of the day. And he waited all day until I got home to just, come busting through and being like, I don't have to do it today, which was awesome.
Oh
But it just
man,
showed me like how happy he was, right, by doing something that was hard.
right. That's such a good analogy. I love that.
There's so much you can learn from kids and children, it's just so cool, because they're, it's just wild. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
to share in that joy with you, let's say you might have had a hard day at the office and to come home and see your little boy, it's
Yeah,
such
for sure.
joy
Yeah, for
because
sure.
because of a task that you gave him that he didn't want to do, but you knew would make him better and enjoy
Yep.
this summer
Yep.
more. Maybe we should do an episode on parenting.
Well, we would need my wife involved on that one. So
Most
she's
certainly.
uh she's the glue and the master when it comes to that. I just do what I can to provide as much support as possible.
Right. Well, we would love to have her takes because I certainly wouldn't have too much insight to
Sure.
provide. One day I
But
will though.
you brought up the Founders podcast, and I absolutely love the Founders podcast. And I believe it was either on the Founders podcast or maybe been on one of Andy Frisella's podcasts because I really enjoyed listening to Andy Frisella as well. And there was a segment on Theodore Roosevelt, so Teddy, and it, I may butcher this, I may have some of the details wrong, but the way that I heard and understood this is that his family would go hiking. They were avid, like they loved the outdoors. So they were avid like adventurists. And whenever they were hiking and they were going on a trail, if something was in the way on the trail, the rule of the family was we're not going to go around it. Whatever it is, we're going over it or we're going through it, no matter what. Don't care how big the boulder, don't care how big the rock, don't care if it's, a mud pit, don't care if it's a swamp. We're not going around. We're going through it or we're going over it. And I just love that mentality, right? Of like, no matter how hard things get, it does not matter. We're going to continue to press forward, against plan. And I just
Right.
love that. I do think about that all the time.
Right. And life isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be difficult so that we appreciate what it's like to not be faced with difficulty 24/7.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
exactly. Right. I mean, like, come on. Otherwise, it would be heaven on earth. And he didn't intend for earth to be heaven, right? That's why there is heaven. So,
Right.
like, I know this is, kind of weird, and I don't mean to like get morbid on you at all, but like
No, it's
whenever,
okay.
whenever I have like a friend or a family member, that, has a loss of life, right? Obviously, it's a very difficult, time for everyone involved. But I take a completely different approach. And I have an approach that just puts a smile on my face because I have this sense that every day that we're here on earth, right, is just a test for us to get to heaven. And in a way, we wait our entire lives, whether it's 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, right? We wait our entire lives just to make it to heaven. So when
Totally.
someone leaves this earth, how lucky are they to beat us there? Right? Like, how lucky. They're in the promised land. We'll reunite eventually, but like, I should be happy, right? That they're in a place where there aren't problems and challenges like we
Right.
deal with and experience on a day-to-day basis. But Will, the book you gave me, Jesus Calling, has been just a constant phenomenal reminder to expect challenges, to expect hardships here on earth. This was intended.
Right. Totally.
So, I do think about that all the time.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you do. And I've begun to read it more than once throughout the my days. And thanks for that. You shared that idea with me because formerly I was just reading it once a day.
Yeah,
First
I
thing
like
I do when I
revisiting it.
wake up. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try to adopt that idea that I don't have to be as sad as I have been when somebody passes on. I suppose there's another wonderful attribute about it, and that is people don't have to experience pain anymore. they're with their
That's
heavenly
it.
Father,
Right.
and I
All of the
suppose,
family members that they lost, right? All the relatives, all the friendships, the relationships. Yeah, you got to take a, the glass is half full, approach to everything in life.
the
That
glass
that's what we
is
have to do.
most certainly full. And if you do a few things right, most things right, you'll be able to meet the best version of yourself once you get there, and it'll be a pleasure to shake hands
For
with that
sure.
person.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. But let's get back to, designing one's life because that is one of, again, the like most fundamental important aspects, at least from my perspective, to be able to get right early on in, your life
right,
because you have this long, tremendous runway ahead of you. And we eat, as humans, right? God gave us the gift of free will. We have the choice of doing whatever it is that we want here on this planet. And, some of us use our gifts for good, some of us use time not so well. So it just depends on who you are, who you want to be, and the life that you want to build.
right.
So coming back around to like the what do you actually want? I think that this is like a personal exercise. And if I was counseling someone like you will, as an example, I'd say, Will, take a yellow legal pad and just start writing down and jotting down
Here's a mini
the
one.
life that you want to live. Perfect, right? Because you and I have done this. So we've gone through this, this exercise, and we get to great specificity in terms of the house that one wants to live, how much money they're spending, right? Like, do you care about looking at menu prices? Do you like, right? Like these things matter. Some people are very satisfied once they get above a certain level of income and they don't want more as long as they have, great security and not a tremendous amount of stress and responsibilities like after hours or on the weekend. And that's okay. So ultimately it comes back to like knowing oneself. So like know thyself, incredibly important. And as I think about, the demographics that I've been exposed to, at least in the work world and in business, I generally only see three types of people. The first person is what I'll refer to as like come and go. So this is an individual in business who's here, for a short period of time. Maybe it's a high school student or a college student, right? Like they just have summers available. There's a place for them. They add value, but not, like a career opportunity, not a lot of income coming for this individual. They're
Right.
just doing it temporarily, right? As a stepping stone to something else.
Yeah.
Then you have the second demographic who isn't tremendously money motivated, but they want, enough financial resources to live a good life. But they don't want the stress of managing other people. They don't want the stress of having to work after hours or put in overtime or work on the weekends. They don't
Right.
want the responsibility of making payroll,
They want to
right?
be
And they're
comfortable.
exactly, they want to be comfortable. And there's a
Yeah.
place for this individual. I mean, this is like the majority of the working world, like fits here in this demographic. And then the third individual is who I'll refer to as like upward bound. No matter where they are, they want to be at the top of the organization. They want to be the CEO. They want to be the owner.
Mm.
And they're like, I don't care who's ahead of me, right? Like I will do whatever it takes to get to the top of this organization. And I've seen people move from like demographic one to two to two to three and three to two and so forth, depending upon like the season of life one's in. But I bring this up because when I begin this life design exercise and we begin thinking about the things that we want in life, if your list will comes out to be where, you're satisfied making 60, $70,000 a year, right? Like that's a pretty simple path to be able to get to that level of earnings.
Mm.
Now, stated differently, if your list requires you to be making 60, I'm sorry, 600 or $700,000 a year, right? There's only a few paths that can be able to get you to that level of income.
Right.
So, depending upon the life that I want to live, that ultimately determines and dictates the type of vehicle that I got to get into.
Hmm.
And again, the vehicle is the career, it's the job, or it's the business that I own. Like that is the vehicle. And once you recognize I can't get to where I want to go in this vehicle, you do the prudent thing, you get out and you get into a new one
Right.
that you think will get you there.
Right. Or maybe even reach out to people that have a position or own a business that you want to own one day. Figure out
Right?
how they did it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Buy them a
But
coffee. Listen
exactly.
twice as
Reach
much as you
out.
speak. Yeah.
Yes. But like when you go through this life design exercise, again, if I know to have the lifestyle of my dreams, it requires $600,000 a year. I'm not going to be a school teacher, probably not going to be a firefighter or a policeman, right? Because these are not vehicles to get me the things that I want out of life. And that's where so many have been, misguided or misled when evaluating or determining careers. Because I mean, think about this, Will, just as an example, I came from the physical therapy industry, and so many of these physical therapists make 70, $80,000 a year, which is nothing to scoff at by any means.
Right.
However, many of them took on 100, $200,000 of debt to be able to generate that level of earnings. But as a 18, 19, 20-year-old going into college where the brain isn't fully developed and you're seeing that you're going to make 70 to 80K a year, like to an 18-year-old, right? That's like dying on to heaven money. That's a lot of money, for someone young without responsibilities, without a family, without dependents. So we make these decisions early on in life, before having thought about the life that we want to live, before going through life design, understanding the vehicle that we need to get into in order to generate, the life that we want to live.
Right. And would you say that this is one area where the school system may or may not have failed individuals because they weren't allotted the time to consider these options ahead of them?
Yeah, I would call the course life planning.
Yeah.
Right, we like walk every student through like the exercise of designing the lifestyle of your dreams. Right, write it out. We have to know what this looks like. We got
Right.
to understand how much income this requires.
Right.
And once we have this understood, again, it's much easier to begin evaluating the different pathways that one would take to be able to arrive at that lifestyle.
Mm.
You may only have one path, it may be three.
Right.
But when you find that path, that vehicle, it may not be something that you're passionate about. But if that is the vehicle to get you the life of your dreams, you'll become passionate about it pretty fast
I
because
have
every
to
day you're getting closer and closer, right, to living the life of your dreams.
totally.
So, like, I take a completely different approach. I don't, follow the bandwagon of like, follow your passions, right? You like have to love every day, every single day. You have to absolutely love. I don't ascribe to that. Like, business is hard. Like, business is messy, especially service-based businesses, because these businesses are, comprised of people, and people are inherently messy.
Right. 100%. Yeah. I mean,
So, just again, just to back up, when it comes to like, what do I want? I'm not thinking about like, what am I doing day to day? I'm thinking about what kind of life do I want to live? How much money do I need to earn to live that life?
mhm.
And
And
then
then
once I know
doing
what that, yeah, please.
whatever you possibly can to obtain that position so that you can, regardless of whether you like it or not, just do it. And then,
Yes. If it's what you really want. Because if it's what you really want, it won't be lip service. You'll truly be willing to do the work required to get that life. Like perfect example from my life. So when I was building physical therapy and balance centers amongst, with dozens of other people, right? Like this wasn't, the success of that company wasn't predicated on me by no
right.
means.
No one can do it
But
alone.
I had a tremendous opportunity to enhance the sales volume of new franchises being sold across the United States. And at the time, we were aggressively franchising to two demographics: physical therapists and otolaryngologists. Those are ear, nose, and throat doctors. I had identified a third demographic, audiologists, that would fit perfectly into our model of balance and dizziness centers. Because the inner ear, the vestibular system, a lot of dizziness patients end up going to audiologists.
Okay.
Nonetheless,
Fascinating.
this demographic, physical therapists, ENTs, were only available to meet face to face on the weekends because they're treating patients all day long, Monday through Friday, right? So, like, no ability to communicate with these individuals, these practice owners, because their hands are on patients. Like the ENTs, right? They're in surgery with these patients. So, I had Saturdays available to meet face to face. I was alternating one Saturday with ENTs, the next Saturday with PTs, the next Saturday with ENTs, and then PTs. So I'm trying to figure out, where do I add this third demographic of audiologists? I want the results of what this new demographic will bring. Granted, I don't really want to do the work because what I'm about to share with you is that the only day that we could accommodate this for was on Sundays. So now I went from working, right, in the office Monday through Friday to being face to face with either physical therapists or otolaryngologists, and then doing the exact same thing on Sunday, now with audiologists.
And
And
traveling
then
too.
going, oh yeah, a lot of travel all across the United States. So these were 7 days in a row to where now there's no weekend. I wanted the result.
And you're
I did
building a
not want,
family as well.
correct. I wanted to build a financial wall around my family.
Insane.
That was the goal. So I said to myself over and over again, like, I don't want to do this trip, right? I don't want to lose both of my weekends where I have to get up at, 5 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday and then take a red eye home. Like, I don't want to do these things, but I want the result. So frequently before I left, I remember, kissing my wife goodbye and being babe, I don't want to do this trip, but I want the check that comes with it. So I'm willing to do it. And,
Right.
that was just like our thing, right? Like it was just expected. Like I'm going to discipline myself to be able to go after the things that I'm driven and that like I desire because like it wasn't lip service for me. Like I wanted to do the work. And a little update on that. I did it for 3 weeks in a row. Couldn't keep the days of the week straight. Like I didn't know what day of the week it was. And my team and I were really struggling with, Tuesday, we thought it was Thursday and we were all just miscombobulated. So we said, well, this is not sustainable. The leading to burnout. Like we just can't continue to do this.
Right.
So we ended up just moving into like a third rotation, right? So we do like PT, ENT, audiologist just on Saturdays. So those were 6 day work weeks every single week, for 5 years, building that organization every single week
And
without exception.
for the listener, Matt, just in case they think I knew all of this before you shared all of that, I did not. And that is incredible for me to hear. It's just wonderful to have a mentor who is this driven to accomplish your goal. But it sounds to me like there were two standout lessons from what you just shared. One is you'll do what's required, regardless of what actions you have to take. And two, shout out to Mrs. Demaro, you have to find somebody that's, willing to support you as much as she did. Give up so much of her time with you and be like, hey, I know you don't want to do this, but this is
For
what
sure.
this is what
Yeah,
has to be
that
done.
that's so true. And like I'm not one to give or provide relationship advice. I don't think, I've earned that right. But for my wife and I, like we are one person. Like this ring on my finger, like means everything to me. Like we are one.
Amen.
And I could not do what I do without her in my life. So we are a team. And my perspective is that's how all marriages should be, right? It's never like me against her. Like it's us, right? Against the world. It's us against everyone else, right? She's my ride or die. And I would hope that everyone has, similar, mentality, when it comes to like a relationship, right? Like marriage, you are becoming one.
Yeah. And one thing that has stood out to me and did stand out to me as I was preparing for our episode today is it takes me back to a story a few years ago where I heard about this individual. He was a former CEO of Procter and Gamble. So I reached out to him and I said, um, Mr. So and so, may I buy you some lunch? And you'll appreciate this because where we ended up getting lunch was at Duval's, a restaurant that Matt knows rather well.
Is this
And
guy's first name John?
yes, sir.
Is this John Lilly?
Yes, sir.
Can we give a shout out to John Lilly? Because Will, I did the exact same thing to John no less than like 6 or 7 years ago. And John
Did
and I
you?
got really close, which is hilarious. I did the exact same thing.
That's
The
so
exact same thing,
cool.
right? So like
Yeah.
for listeners, Will and I live in Sarasota, Florida, and it's a hot pocket for retirees, especially like wealthy retirees.
Right.
So this was one of those like gem of an individual like who had been a massive, like Fortune 500 CEO, and there aren't too many of those around. So that's wild that you reached out to him too independently. That's so crazy.
The irony is
I'm
just
sorry to cut you off. Keep going. Keep telling me the story.
no, he is a phenomenal individual, a phenomenal business person, obviously, Fortune 500 CEO. I met with him. I was still in business school at the time, and I asked to meet him weekday. I had driven back from Winter Park to meet Mr. Lilly, and I show up. button down, think I'm looking well dressed enough. Sure enough, I walk in, he's got his suit and tie on. I'm like, shoot.
Every
Um,
day.
but so I walk in there, Mr. Lilly seems to know everybody, knows the waitress by name. He's ordering something that isn't on the menu. And he goes, what would you like? Mind you, I was 1 minute late, which, with all due respect, I'm grateful he taught me this lesson, but he let me know about that. Don't be late if you're meeting with a former Fortune 500 CEO.
That's him being
Um,
kind, not nice.
right. And so I'm sitting here at Duval's, right? He's in the booth. I'm in the chair facing the wall. I've never been to Duval's. I'm looking at the menu. I don't know what I want to have. I'm taking my time. Unfortunately, didn't know at the time this was unfortunate. He looks at me. He goes, "What is taking you so long?" I go, I'm sorry, Mr. Lilly. Actually, I said, sorry, sir. And then he let me know about that. He said, don't ever call me sir. He said, let that be the last time you ever call me sir. Why? Because that makes it seem like I'm better than you. And I'm not better than you. We are equals. So I continue to look at him, but in
Yeah.
my head,
Wow.
I'm looking
Right.
around like,
Wow.
who is this person?
Hmm.
And then, I continue to look at the menu because he's going to have the waitress who he knows come back and take my order. And I go, I don't know. What do you think I should get? He looks at me, he goes, does it really matter what you get to eat for lunch today? Do you think you will remember what you had for lunch today? Tomorrow? He goes, no, order something. I go, I'm looking at the waitress
Be
now.
decisive. Yeah, he's giving
Uh,
you all these life lessons real quick, rapid fire.
I'll have the chicken Caesar wrap, please. Thank you. And I'm just like super self-conscious at the point. I'm super flush in the face. And then we get to talking, right? And this is the point of the story. Um, Ultimately, I started asking about his business, and I said, "What advice do you have for somebody like me?" I'm 23 at the time, or no, excuse me, I'm 24 at the time, still 24, and I say I'd like to be successful. And I figured the best way to do that is to meet successful people like yourself. And he said, what advice do you have for me? And he gave me a whole spiel. I had my one thing I did do is I had my legal pad, and he said, work your tail off. Work harder than you believe anybody else is working around you. But he said this, I am a little bit ashamed of the father that I am today. I said, why? He said, I cared more about my business than I did for my kids. And he said, I thought that making plenty of money would allow me to buy my children back after not being present for so many years. And he said that today his relationship continues to suffer because he spent so much time away from his kids. So, my question to you, Matt, is based on the amount of work that it takes to get to where I want to go, to get where the listener wants to go, how do you not allow that to be the case?
Sure.
If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to that like work-life balance and knowing thyself. Having studied so many multi-billionaires and so many incredibly successful, people in life, I have noticed a lot of similarities and patterns that they've, had at least in terms of like regrets towards the end of life. And at the end of life, on my tombstone, right, no one's going to write down like my CAGR, my compounded annual growth rate, year over year. No one's going to care that like, okay, he got, a 26% annual rate of return, or he died, with $120 million in the bank, right? You can't take it with you. So at the end of life, like, what do you want? And to me, like nothing would be more important than like just like incredibly strong relationships, like with the people that mean and matter most to me in life.
Right.
So there is this fine line, between providing for, your family and spending time with your family. Like there is a fine line between it. But one just has to ask, like, who do you want to be? I think you and I were both looking at that, Brad Jacobs video from last week. And in this video, he said he's never met a single billionaire in his lifetime that worked even a 50-hour week who took a 2-week vacation, right? All encompassing, 7 days a week, all encompassing. And he even expressed that he had not necessarily strained relationships with his children, but he didn't have a lot of time with his children. And he had referenced that it was more like he was a surgeon. And when he would come home, his wife would, tell his children, like, you get 1 hour with dad, like 1 hour.
Right.
And
Right.
that's how his relationship was with his children.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of regret when it comes to familial relations. I've seen a tremendous amount of divorce with ultra successful people, who neglect family, who neglect relationships, to the benefit of business. And then lastly, number three, health deterioration, where one does not prioritize their wealth. I'm sorry, their health. They prioritize wealth over health.
Right.
Nothing would be worse than having a house that's falling down on me and I can't get out.
Right.
And that's what happens if you neglect your body and you don't live a very healthy lifestyle. Who cares how much money you have? Like I think about this all the time, well, not all the time. I read it on X, Twitter, one day, and I just thought it was a great question, and I have revisited it a few times. Like one of those like nasty colds like that we get from time to time, like kind of like a sinus pressure. You just don't
Sure.
feel good, right?
Right.
Would you trade living the rest of your life with a day cold, for 50 million in the bank? Like, would you do that trade?
What an interesting question. I don't think so.
It's zero chance for me. Zero. Zero. Even if someone was like, hey, if you don't give me your entire net worth, you're gonna have a head cold for the rest of your life. Like, I'd be like, sure, here you go. I'll start over. I don't want to feel crappy and bad day to day, like health again. Like, that would just be the worst to me.
Right. I'm not sure I could, I'm not sure you could do it all again, feeling that poor
Well,
physically.
yeah, that's the other side of it, right? Just don't want to do that. But the
Right.
amount of successful people that I know that have strained relationships, with their children who attempted to buy back their love through, like very expensive watches, expensive cars, houses, whatever it may be, vacations. It's a lot. It's tremendous.
Right.
And for me individually, I just made a choice that I don't want that to be me, right? Like God gave us, free will. So we all have a choice. We get to make a choice.
Right.
And I have committed that I will be there for certain events, like for my children that matter a lot in life. But at the same time, my family understands my ambition, my desire, and to help support me, right? They give me freedom to be able to focus on the things that bring me purpose and bring me greater levels of happiness.
Right. 90% of life is just showing up. And I hope to embody
Yeah,
that in the future
right.
because I wouldn't want my future son or daughter to sit around when they're 30 years old and look at some fancy watch on their wrist and think this is the price of my dad not showing up enough.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. Like it really does. It sounds terrible.
It does
Like
sound
I'd
terrible.
rather, be broke and have a close and great relationship, like with my kids and my family,
Right.
than be on an island all by myself, with a mega yacht parked over there and, a few maids and butlers,
Right.
right? Like how bored and how awful, would something like that be? So at the
Sounds
same time, it's like on occasion, like as I have my head down building or as, if I'm in a season of suck, I'll just stop and, I'll just ask myself, like, is this going to be worth it? Like at the end. And, Jimmy Hiller, another mentor of mine, has this saying where, he's like, you don't ever quote, pay the price, like in business. You only pay the price if you fail.
mm,
Meaning if you invested the time, the energy and effort, and you got the reward that you were expecting, right? You didn't pay the price, like you got paid, right? If you
right.
didn't get the outcome, you did pay the price. You paid the price of failure, right? In that circumstance.
Right.
But again, it goes back to that fine line between providing for and, like supporting and being with. So I never want either of my children to think like money is more important to me than them because it's not. If one of them got sick, right? No matter what it took, even if it took every last penny between my wife and I, whatever it takes
Right.
is what we would do.
Right.
So like nothing is more important, than raising them to being great contributors to society, pouring over our core values, having them have a deep relationship with Christ, and ultimately being able to serve others and, live a very like healthy and happy life. Like that's what I want. So like when you say, like John Lilly, was successful, right? Successful, I'm sure, in terms of like financial and monetary sense. But other aspects of life, right? Don't know. Just don't know.
Right.
Each of us defines success in our own unique ways. Clearly, that's one of his measurements, right? Relationships with family, and it's something that he's thinking about. But for us, we can take lessons on not only what to do, but what not to do. That's just
Totally.
as important. I think it's Jim Rohn who says, it's like find the guy who messed it all up. Find the guy who's been divorced like 6 or 7 times, who's gone bankrupt over and over again, who can't stick to one thing, who's, addicted to drugs and alcohol. And
Right.
just ask him if you can follow him for a day, just to tell me how you messed it all up. So I don't do the same thing, right? You can
Well,
get so much value from learning what not to do as much as you can on what to do.
I recently, and I think you heard about this as well, I recently found out that someone I speak to somewhat regularly, her mother was divorced 11 times. She's on her 12th husband. Maybe I should see if we can set up a Zoom call.
Yeah. How did you mess it all up?
Yeah, but this topic here is so interesting to me, Matt, because within the business um like industry, I suppose you could say, business is all about solving problems, yet it's tied to health. And what's interesting is everybody has 1,000 problems until they have a health problem, and then you
Yeah,
have
that's
one
one.
problem. I heard that when I was working up in Canada a couple of years back, and I remember just sitting back in my chair, being real quiet for a while. It's like, wow.
It's true. It's so true. So like to not neglect family, to not neglect health, like are two non-negotiables for me as I continue to build my life, as I continue to build wealth and serve and support others.
Right.
But those are two non-negotiables, like period. But like when you think about like what people want, like I am a believer in Maslow's like hierarchy of needs. And at the very bottom of this pyramid, right, are your like physiological needs. So this is like, right, I need food, like I need to be able to sleep somewhere, like have shelter over my head, I gotta have clothes, right? Like that's more of the like health for me, like
Yeah.
physiological needs. I need my health, I need to be protected, I need food.
Hmm.
And then you move up to like safety. So it's more along the lines of like, do I have steady income, right? Like employment. Do I have resources? Do I have access to a doctor, right? Like, is my home protected? Am I feeling like people are going to break in, right? Like, so once these physiological needs are met, you want to move to like protection.
Hmm.
Once protection's set into place, it moves over to like relationships, love, belonging.
Hmm.
So like developing friendships, getting intimate, with a partner, building a family, having a sense, of like connection and camaraderie, between people. Following that level comes up to esteem, like self-esteem, ego, status, like recognition, your job title, whether you have freedom to go to a kids event, if one of your kids is graduating as an example,
Right.
right? Like that's that level of, we'll call it, I'll refer to it as ego. And then the final level is that self-actualization, where it's like, I have the desire of becoming the best version of myself.
Hmm.
But one can't focus on becoming the best version of themselves until the rest of the foundation is taken care of. So for
Okay.
me, like early on in life, I recognize like physiological needs, my safety needs, those two would be handled primarily by building a financial wall around my family, right? Like if I built a financial fortress and nothing could ever, happen, we could weather any storm. Like I got my physiological needs met, right? I got my house, shelter, all that, clothing. Number two was safety, right? Like I'm good. I got the resources. Money's not going to get you love and belonging. Money will help with ego, but it's not going to help you with, necessarily like friendships and, intimacy or building a family. I mean, sure, as a male, if you like attract a gold digger, it will, but generally speaking, it doesn't. So like when you ask, like originally, does money, create happiness? Like, no, it helps. I've been broke and happy, and I've been wealthy and happy. And being wealthy and happy is just much more fun than being broke and happy. But nonetheless, it does not buy happiness, the love and the belonging, the high level of self-esteem, ego, how you view oneself. And then the self-actualization, to me at least, is where greater levels of happiness like ultimately come from, if that makes sense.
When, if you don't mind me asking, when do you feel as though you hit the self-action? Did it
I
take the
haven't.
sex? You haven't.
No,
Okay.
I think it's an ongoing, ever evolving journey for me. Every day I learn more. I learn of new ways to serve, new ways to support, new ideas of impact. I don't think it's ever going to stop. As more information comes into my mind, as technology advances, as we have greater uses of, artificial intelligence to enhance efficiency and productivity, I don't think, I'm ever going to be self-actualized, if you will,
Okay.
until I make it up in heaven.
Amen.
But that's the goal. Like that's what I'm working on now, right? I'm not working on the base, base layers. I got all that.
Right.
So I got everything done except for the tip of the pyramid, which is now again purpose driven, mission driven, how to create the largest impact. It's no longer about money for me.
Right.
And and you have to get money for it to no longer be about money for you. So I'm not, saying that one shouldn't be financially ambitious or financially motivated because that's who I was to a very unhealthy extent.
Hmm. Because money is not everything to somebody that has it, but it is everything to somebody that doesn't have it. Would you agree?
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Totally
I
agree.
I believe a
I,
rapper said that.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I mean, like I was joking around with you yesterday when you were you because Thomas just turned. Shout out to Thomas who just turned 24 yesterday,
Happy
and you
belated
two,
Thomas.
yeah, belated happy birthday, Thomas. But because you two are 24, I'm at 33. I was just like, would I go back to 24? My joking comment was like, absolutely not. Just because I have so much more money today, like I have my family, I have my kids, right? Like, no chance would I ever go back if I had the same mind and the same knowledge that I have today of the present, like sure, maybe I'd go back because, of course, there's some investments that I definitely want to make in hindsight.
Mhm.
Outside of that, no interest in going back in time whatsoever. None, zero.
Yeah, geez, 9 years ago, Apple would have been great. A whole bunch of different
Yeah, it would have been.
stocks would have been great.
Yeah.
Well, if it's okay
Yep.
with you, Matt, as we continue on throughout our silent service journey, I'm looking to continue building my base because I am not near the
Oh, we got to build your
self-actualization
base. We're gonna
point.
build it.
And that's what I'm so grateful and why I'm so excited to chat with you all the time because I can continue to build this base and the listener can build their own base as they enjoy this podcast. Now, as we wrap up here, Matt, I did have a few checkpoints for the listener and for myself, and even for you too, that I just wanted to see if you agree. Um, this is the final segment of our episode, and it just consists of 4 points.
Okay.
Asking for help isn't a weakness. I would argue it's wisdom, right? You should never be ashamed to ask for help. It's okay. Just like how some men don't want to ask for directions in the car because they
Mm-hmm.
think it's
Mm-hmm.
bad, right? It's okay, ask for
Mm-hmm.
directions
Mm-hmm.
or just pull out your GPS. Two, find a mentor who puts your best interest first if you haven't done so. Would you agree?
I would. Yeah, I would.
Three, treat them well, be grateful, and don't take them for granted because it is their time that they're giving to you. And acknowledge your gratitude for them as much as you possibly can. And the last thing is seasoned professionals like John Lilly, like yourself, like whoever it may be that you admire that has achieved a certain point of success. Someone helped them, so don't feel ashamed for asking help. They want to give back and give them the opportunity to talk about themselves. Buy them a coffee, as I said earlier. Listen twice as much as you speak, because ultimately one day, 10, 20, 30 years from now, by the way, it doesn't matter how old you are,
Mhm.
but you'll get to a point as long as your ambition stays consistent, but you'll get to a point where you too will want to give back. So
So true. Yep, I agree with all four of those items. And I think it was number two. Like the only additional contribution is look to see what you can give to them.
totally.
Like what aspect of their life, right, could you enhance?
Right.
Ask them, what can I do for you? Right? You've been so impactful, being able to spend just an hour with me over this lunch. The wisdom that you're imparting in me, like I'm just tremendously grateful for. Like, what can I do for you in return?
Right. And sometimes even in our conversations, Matt, I suppose this is a little bit vulnerable, but or I'm being a bit vulnerable
Mhm.
because I know I'm not anywhere near, I haven't achieved the same amount of knowledge that you have. And in some ways, I don't feel like I can offer the same amount of wisdom that you offer me, but there's still ways I can give to you. Would you agree?
Of course.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Because I don't want
Yeah.
to take, that's not the name of the game.
I think you're giving.
Okay, cool. Because I am in that service mood. So
I think you're a giver.
I think so
I put
too.
you in the giver bucket.
I appreciate that. I plan to stay
Good.
in that. So in closing, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Remember that passivity is dangerous. Remember, you should be try to be, if it fits right and if it feels good, try to be a part of that 2% that is ambitious because, the life of your dreams sounds a bit cliche, but it just doesn't happen if you're passive. So go ahead and figure out what it is that you truly want to do and get after it. Choose it with intention because your life is awfully precious and you should treat it as such. So,
And it goes by quickly.
yeah, it totally does. And maybe you have no idea what you want to do. Maybe you're in college, maybe you're about to go to college, maybe you're 45 years old. It's totally okay. You
It's
just
never
have
too
to
late to design a life.
you just have to choose to
Hmm.
care about your future. So, in closing, Matt graciously recommended me to read the 38 letters that John Rockefeller wrote to his son. And just this idea of listening has just come across me so often every single day. I think that I should listen more than I speak. And he writes, "Let me wait before talking. Be deliberate. Listen is the motto I always follow in business." That's JDR for you. So, with that, listener, and Matt, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
See ya. Let's go get lunch.
All right, let's go.